Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Achieve More podcast. My name is Anthony. You can find me on YouTube at Picksburgh. Do a lot of videos there with my girlfriend and also do a lot of other live streams with this guy over here, Michael, over at Huddle Card Collection, who's my co-host. Michael, how you doing, man?
Doing wonderful. Busy. Just got back from the National last week, the sports card convention, and I just been busy.
I'm sure you
Been
made
that.
some great contacts down there.
Yes, I did. I spoke to some. It's interesting. There was a lot of different people there this time that we haven't seen in the past. Like a lot of different tables set up of different type of stuff that was not there the last few times we've gone to the National. So looking forward to
Cool, man. That's awesome.
having some people on the show.
Yeah.
That's
Guys,
all.
make sure you go follow Huddle Card Collection on YouTube so that way you can see all of the new guests and people that Michael's connected with at the National. But without further ado, guys, I'm really excited to introduce to you somebody who has accomplished such a tremendous amount in her life. This is Anne Montgomery. Not only was she a sportscaster on Sports Center for ESPN. She's worked in various other television studios. She's been a writer for newspapers, for magazines, and she's an author of several books. She's been a teacher. She has. Is there anything you haven't done, Anne? Like, I mean, just getting into the interview.
I'm not an astronaut. They didn't invite me to be an astronaut, but life is funny. You follow strange paths, and I've been on a pretty strange one for a long time.
Mm-hmm. So, getting into your strange path, for those people that would be new to you, are you able to give us a brief rundown of who you are and kind of what your background is and kind of what you're up to now?
Yeah, it's funny. Today, there are a lot of women sportscasters, though they're still not doing the big jobs. For some reason, no one puts them in the booth like it's brain surgery to do play-by-play in color. But when I was 17 and my mother looked at me and said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "A sportscaster." She looked at me and she said, "I'm trying to have a serious conversation with you. Don't be ridiculous." Because it was 1972. And there weren't any women sportscasters. It never occurred to me. I mean, had I really understood that there just weren't any, I probably wouldn't have come up with that. But I was an athlete. Well, I was an ice dancer. Some people don't think that's being an athlete, but it is. But I wasn't any good. And every time I see the Olympics, I remember how bad I was. But today I'd play hockey. I would have been a hockey player, but in my time, we weren't allowed, they didn't say, "Hey, you're a girl, you want to play hockey?" They didn't do that. So I wanted to be a sportscaster, and I went to college, and all my professors said, "You will never be a sportscaster because you're a woman. It won't happen. Change your mind." And my senior year in college at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, which of course is the cradle of coaches, Ara Parsegan, Woody Hayes. I'm showing how old I am. They let me my senior year do a sports show, a televised sports show, and I had a male co-host. And they said, "Okay, be a sports reporter." And unfortunately, the football coach, the baseball coach, and the basketball coach, none of them would speak to me. They refused to be interviewed by me because I was a woman.
Wow.
And so I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? But then I realized on college campuses, there are a whole bunch of sports that no one pays attention to at all. There was wrestling and gymnastics and tennis and archery and swimming and things. Nobody ever interviewed them. So I went out and started interviewing them, and they were thrilled. So I never got to do the big teams, but I was out there doing sports reporting every week. Now, this was a recorded show. It was not live. So that's a whole different deal. When I got out of college with my degree in communications, I was so excited, but nobody would even let me apply for a job. Because why? There weren't any women sportscasters. So I ended up working in a bar in Georgetown in Washington, D.C., which was great fun. It was the 80s. You guys are too young to maybe remember it. You don't remember the 80s. But I do, and it was a blast. It really was. All those videos of the 80s, I was in the middle of that somewhere. But I wanted to be a sportscaster, and I couldn't get a job. And you know how in life sometimes weird things just happen that change everything?
Oh, yeah.
For me, it was a Washington Capitals game. Okay. The Capitals sucked, but my aunt, who was more of like a sister to me, and her friend and I all went to see the Capitals play. We're sitting there watching a horrible game. They just sucked. And the guy she was with was an amateur ice hockey official. And he was bemoaning the fact that there just weren't enough officials. Just like today, there aren't enough officials. So my aunt goes, "Oh, Annie skates. She could be a referee." And I went, "Yeah, okay, fine." But, it never occurred to me in a million years, first of all, that hockey skates and figure skates were a little different, right? So I went through the class, I took the test, and one morning after working the late shift in the bar till 3 a.m, I'm at 6 o'clock on the ice with 5-year-olds, 5 and 6-year-old kids. You've seen them play hockey, right?
Oh, yeah.
On their little sticks, and they've got jerseys to their ankles, and their helmets are all tilted because they're too big for their little heads. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go call this hockey game. And I skated out on the ice, and I got the puck in my hand. I'm ready to take my first face off, and I fell. And did either of you ever skate?
A little bit, but way, many years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, not well.
Here's the fourth question. What's the difference between hockey skates and figure skates? No one?
Hockey skates have more support, from what I can tell.
Hockey skates do not have toe picks. Figure skates have toe picks, and they're for landing jumps and taking and for lazy, sloppy skaters like me, they're for getting up off the ice when you fall down. Okay. So I'm lying there on the ice with 5-year-olds looking down at me, and I dug my blade into the ice to get back up, and I fell down again. I fell 3 times trying to get up off the ice. And I don't remember the rest of the game, but what I do remember is on my way home from that game, I had an epiphany. And I realized that because I did not grow up playing sports, I mean, I was an ice skater and I could swim, but I didn't play football, baseball, ice hockey, soccer, or basketball, which were the things that sports tended to cover on the air. And I didn't know the games. So how the hell could I be a sports reporter? So I decided on that drive home that I was going to become a certified amateur official in those 5 main team spectator sports. I started with hockey. I moved to baseball, then football, then basketball, then soccer. And I was going to do that for 5 years. And that somewhere in the country, there might be a forward-thinking news director who would say, "Oh, she must know what she's talking about." And they'd hire me. And that is exactly what happened. Magic.
That's awesome. So when you started doing those officiating classes, I mean, were you still one of the few women involved at that point?
There weren't any women.
Oh,
There were none. No. The thing about hockey is hockey below the Mason-Dixon line in Washington, D.C., they were so delighted to have a body in stripes. They didn't care, right? But when I moved into baseball, oh, my gosh, you would have thought, they tried to run me off. The gentleman who taught I called them up, and I said, "I'd like to be a baseball umpire." And the guy goes, "Really?" And he goes, "So you want to be an umpire, huh, sweetheart?" I found out later he was a former police officer in D.C., big barrel-chested, just like, an umpire from Central Casting would look. And he said, my first class, he said awful things to me. Not sure I can repeat some of them here. But he would say things like, "Yeah, then you have to ejaculate the coach instead of eject the coach." He would say these things like that. And I laughed because I lived in a girls' dormitory for 4 years. I'm like, there's nothing he could say that would freak me out. And I knew he was just trying to run me off. And so I stayed in the class, and he became one of my biggest supporters.
Oh, great.
And he took me to my first little league game. And, you think it's not a big deal, but, when there are little kids out there, but it's terrifying. I never played baseball. So I didn't know what I was doing. And it's really frightening. And so I started baseball and moved into football in the fall. Again, I'm the only woman. And they were all guys from the Pentagon. They tried to get rid of me too, but I kept coming back. And I'm just stubborn, I think. But what did I learn? I learned about the games. Okay. And people always say, "Oh, you want to be a sportscaster?" Well, who held the home run record and whenever? And I'm like, that's not important. The games are important. Right. I can look up who did something when. And I'm not great with statistics, I'll tell you that, but I understand the games and how they're played and how they're supposed to be played. Because the irony of all of this is that I never quit officiating. I thought once I got into television, I would never officiate again, but I ended up doing baseball for 25 years and football for 40.
Wow.
So
That's awesome.
I retired from football in 2019. Broke my heart. I don't miss TV. I don't miss teaching. I miss Friday night football is what I miss. And you know, it's really funny. I have another sports question. How many referees on a football field?
Okay.
9.
Anthony, how many?
I was going to say 5, but I don't know.
I'll tell you, the answer is the same whether it's Pop Warner or the NFL.
Really?
Oh.
There's one. The white hat, the one that says I hold 76 offense. That's okay. That's the referee. So my first 14 years in football, I was a wing. You know, I was a linesman or line judge. And every year I got thrown off crews because the guys would say, we're never going to get the 5A state championship with you on our crew because you're a girl. And they were right, sadly. And so one year I'm in a class of 400, and we're in our kickoff meeting. There are 400 football officials in Arizona. We all met on the same day every year. And they said, anybody who wants to start a new crew, stand up. And if anybody wants to go work with them, they'll come over. And I stood up in the middle of that class and said, I'm going to be a referee. I'm going to be the crew chief. You want to work with me? I'll be in that corner over there. And because then they'll know exactly what they're going to get. They were never going to get the state championship, but I'm a really good official. And we worked really hard. We did the best we could. Were we perfect? Of course not. But the bottom line is my last 24 years, I was the crew chief, which meant I was in charge. I like that part.
Wow.
But yeah, so you can win beer.
Really awesome.
One referee on a football field. Some reason most people don't know that.
Yeah, I was thinking about the whole crew, but you're right. When you think of the referee, that's the guy or the woman who with
guy is fine. Gender neutral.
They're the ones that are they're the ones that are in the camera, who are making announcing what the penalties were and all the other kind of stuff.
Yeah. And once again, girls call each other guys, so guys is gender neutral. Don't worry about it. You can. They always would stop in the middle of a meeting with 400 guys and go, "Oh, sorry, Annie, we said guys is fine."
Sounds good. So yeah, what was it like for you though, being able to accomplish that and actually be the crew chief after all of the times that it seems like every sport you got into tried to run you off?
They did. In fact, my commissioner once took me aside and he said, it's really unfortunate that you don't officiate women's sports. You might get somewhere. I'm like, I knew at that point, I'm never going to get the big games. I'm not. But my crew worked every week. And I ended up working with guys on my crew that worked with me 10, 12, 13 years. So we ended up with a great group of guys. It was like a family. And that's what I miss. People don't understand how much time we spend together. And it was the same in baseball. I had one partner for 5 years who was, one of the most important people in my life. And we were pals. And I was very fortunate with a lot of my crewmates that their wives were cool with it. Because sometimes they weren't. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they weren't. People would make a big deal out of, oh, you're working with a woman. And they would put my guys down. But the ones that stuck with me for years were like, screw you, we're fine. We work every week. We enjoy what we do. We work hard. We do the best we can. Now, you obviously know that officials take a lot of crap. I mean, I've had police escorts to my car. I've had my tire knifed over a Sandy Koufax baseball game. I've had people, right face nose to nose with me, spitting in my face. People say horrible things. It's part of the package, sadly, which is why we can't get officials anymore, because young people will not put up with that. Young people are sensitive, apparently, and they don't want to do that. So oddly, I miss that. I don't know why. There's probably a defect in my character that I miss being an official, but I do.
Well, I'll tell you, you're right about that, because I just stopped. I've coached baseball for many, many years, and these last few seasons, we have had games, either canceled or moved or rescheduled, that kind of stuff, because of the lack of umpires. And we only need 2 umpires a game. You usually have just a home plate and then 1 base umpire, but this is anywhere from 18 down to 10U, all that type of stuff. So not like you need a full crew. And they were still having a hard time, getting people, getting, anybody that wants to go ahead and do that job, because you're right. It is a thankless job, and you never know what mom or dad or grandma, or grandpa, or aunt, and uncle is going to fire out of their mouth, because they think you're going to screw their kid out of going ahead and being a major leaguer.
Oh, I know. That's my favorite. I just want to go time. Ma'am, your child is not going to be a major league ball player. They're not even going to get a college scholarship. You'll be lucky if they stay on the high school team. So can you relax? But I never did that.
I know.
But they all think their kid is going to be a star.
Mm-hmm.
And it breaks my heart, because this is not what sports are supposed to be.
Right.
Sports are supposed to be formative. They're supposed to teach kids important business skills like leadership skills and punctuality and working as a team. That's what this is about. It's not, honestly, if I was going to hire people, I'd say, you were on a team in high school. I don't care if you ever won a game. I care that you showed up at practice. I don't care about the kid that catches the winning touchdown. I care about the kid that drops it and goes to practice the next day. Those are the people I want. And you know what? They're not. Pretty soon we're not going to have games, because my last 5 years or so we didn't have enough officials. I very rarely went to a sub-varsity game where we had a big enough crew.
Oh wow!
And it's exhausting. It's hard enough working with a full crew, especially in football. But I always wanted to call time and call some idiot out of the stands and say, "Okay, you stand over there. Here's my whistle and my hat. You do it." You see
Right.
what that feels like, because you know what, we do the best we can, and statistically, even people that slam all the major league umpires and the NFL guys, they do a damn good job, better than most people do at their daily jobs. They're in the 80s and 90% on their calls. Okay, and I'm going to tell you right now, there's not an official anywhere that wants to get one wrong. We don't, but we do.
Oh, yeah.
We do, because we forgot to have lunch, and we're having a fight with our spouse, or our boss was a jerk. We get distracted like everybody else. So what's going to happen is young officials are coming in. I think last statistic I saw, like half of them quit within the first 2 or 3 years. And eventually there won't be games, because the only time anybody cares about us is if we don't show up. And honestly, that's what's going to happen. And then people, I don't know what they're going to do. And here's the other thing. Most of my career, people didn't film the game and put me on the internet. Now, if there's a mistake in a Pop Warner game, they put it on the internet with a person's name.
Yep.
And they get death threats over kids' games. So I think we have a big problem with this in officiating. Now, I know professional officiating is going to go away. I really think in 10 years you won't have umpires. You'll have AI calling things. Umpires are probably the first to go. Football, it's a little more complicated maybe, but I don't know what's going to happen. I know right now there aren't going to be enough officials, and it's going to get worse. And as you said, Michael, in baseball, you see how many times do you go there, and did you start enough people showing up?
Yep. Oh yeah, for sure.
Sure.
As in business, if you're getting ready to do a presentation or so and so long, you're getting your information, you're getting your facts, you learn something. As an official, did you not study, but did you look up or try and understand the teams that you were going to be officiating? Or is that part of what an official does?
No. Well, okay. That's not, mostly we don't, but especially in football. In Arizona, we have what's called the Arizona Interscholastic Association, and it's big time important. We go through classes, we watch video, we take national exams. I mean, it's not sloppy officiating. I mean, so what happens, the only time that occurs is maybe there's a trend happening. Teams are starting to do certain things we haven't seen before, or one team is doing a play that's maybe not completely legal looking. Then we will find out about that prior to the game, and our commissioner will say, look, please pay attention to this. But do I care whether the team won the championship last year? Do I care who the coach is? No. I don't study that part at all. And I think it's trends that we study. And every year the rules change. The National Association changes how we call things, and we're asked to focus on certain things. Mostly when you're dealing with high school, which is what I dealt with primarily, is that we're dealing with safety issues. heat issues, protecting the quarterback, that kind of thing. So that's mostly what we focus on. I mean, do I care that this quarterback is supposed to be the best in the state? I don't.
Right.
Yeah. So how did your officiating career and all of that kind of lead you more into actually realizing your goal of becoming a sportscaster?
As I mentioned before, I was going to take 5 years. I was working in the restaurant, the bar, and they were wonderful. They scheduled around my games. So I would get up on a Saturday morning and do a doubleheader baseball game, and 5 o'clock trudge into the bar and be there till 3 in the morning. I don't think I sat down for 5 years. And I started applying for jobs. And in those days, pre-internet, of course, there was a magazine called Broadcasting Magazine. And it was everything about broadcasting, and they had want ads in the back. And one would have it would say, wanted sportscaster, apply to box 379, and you didn't know where it was. And remember I mentioned before how life does funny things, that all of a sudden things change. Just like the hockey game. One night I was working in the restaurant, and this husband and wife team came in. I think they worked for ABC. I can't remember the call letters, but he was an editor, and she was the producer and editor, and they were producing a TV show, a 1-hour show special called Long Shots. And they had a woman who wanted to be a boxer, which of course women didn't box back then. They had a truck driver who wanted to be a country singer. And I can't remember the other one, but they came to me because I waited on them all the time. They knew I wanted to be a sportscaster. And they said, hey, we want you to be on our show. We want you to be one of these 4 people. So basically they followed me all through, like they spent a week shooting what I did. They had me at the restaurant. They had me at a baseball game, umpiring baseball. They had me calling a hockey game. I was with Central Casting as a model, not that kind of model, more like they put me in a hard hat kind of model. And so they set up a modeling shoot, and they set me up to do sports on their set. And so there was this like 12-minute piece on me, and it aired, and it won an award. And so I had this reel, because I hadn't been a sportscaster really. College was way behind me at that point. And I sent that reel to that box number that turned out to be in Columbus, Georgia. Now, I grew up in New Jersey, 40 minutes from New York City. I mean, a city is New York. Okay. Yeah. And then I moved to Washington, D.C., the center of the universe. And then I moved to Columbus, Georgia. Oh my God. It was interesting. But, and I knew it was good. And when I was teaching, I would tell kids, please, if you're going to be on TV, go far away from anyone you know, because you're going to suck. And I did. I didn't know how to do the news. I knew how to make a great cocktail. Okay. And I knew how to referee and umpire, but I didn't know how to do a sportscast. I had no idea. I'd never been on live TV. So you're too young. You guys know what carbon paper is?
Yes.
Okay. It used to be when we typed on our old fashioned typewriters, we had carbon paper, and there would be 6 copies. And you type your script, what you want to say on the air, and then they tear it into 6 copies, and one goes to the director, one goes to the producer, one goes to the other anchor, one goes to you, one goes to the teleprompter. I don't know where the other one went. So I didn't understand any of that. And all I knew is they said, type your scripts now. And so I did. I'm glad to be here, whatever. And no one explained that there was a line down the middle of those pieces of paper, and that I was only supposed to type my scripts on the right side. The left side was for directions to the director, meaning, oh, Anne's on camera here. Now bring up the video from the baseball game. Now bring up the score. Now bring up the soundbite. I didn't know any of that. So I just typed from one end to the other. And I also didn't know that I was supposed to have a copy with me, paper copies, right? So I got on the set. They introduced me. I turned to the teleprompter, and all of my scripts were cut in half. I couldn't read a single sentence. And I was terrified because I was on live TV, and I didn't have the scripts in my hand. It was like a car wreck, where you don't remember everything that happened. I don't remember. And quite frankly, I couldn't believe they didn't fire me. But the worst part was my mother, who was very against me being a sportscaster. Her best friend was in Atlanta and was in a hotel and turned on the TV, and there I was. And she called my mother and told her I was terrible. And my mother wouldn't see me on TV for, 2-3 years. She refused.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But obviously it worked out.
It did. It did. I worked for 5 TV stations, locally and nationally. I was at ESPN, which was no fun at all. They only hired women because, they said they had to. I was there 90 to 92 when they were being told they couldn't just have all guys. And so they hired the women and they treated us all like crap. And the hard part for me is I'd worked for 3 TV stations at that point. I'd been a beat reporter with the Arizona Cardinals. I traveled with the NFL team. I covered covered the Suns all the time. I mean, I didn't know. I knew what I was doing. I understood sports, but they hired me and then they act like I don't have a clue. And I'll give you a perfect example. I'm guessing you guys have seen SportsCenter, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so after SportsCenter, well, I'm live on the set and I have production assistants. And these are 21-year-old kids right out of college, want to be in sports, yay. And they have no experience. And their job is to watch games, cut 3 or 4 highlights, and bring them to the anchors before we go on the set. But sometimes the games end late, or we're on the set when they're ending. So every once in a while, one of those kids would come sliding in and throw highlights on the desk. Well, this happened one night. And just as a kid threw those highlights on, the red light went on. I went, we're going to Wrigley Field. So we go to Wrigley Field, and the first highlight says, a fan got hit with the ball with a foul tip in the front row. And this guy just got slammed and was like, they had to carry him out. I knew that highlight was wrong. I knew it was a mistake, but the next highlight came up so fast I couldn't fix it. So after SportsCenter, there's always what's called a postmortem, which means you all sit around a conference table and discuss what went well, what went poorly, and what can we do better. So I raised my hand and I said, Rich, to the PA. I said, I need to talk to you about that first highlight. I said, you said a guy got hit by a foul tip in the front row at Wrigley Field. He goes, yeah, why? What's wrong with it? I said, it's wrong. You can't be hit with a foul tip. You can only be hit with a foul ball. A foul ball is a ball that goes into dead ball territory. It's dead. If you're stealing home, I got to put you back on third. But a foul tip goes from the bat to the catcher's glove. It's a strike, but it's a live ball. So if you steal home and make it, then it's a run. And there's silence. All these people from SportsCenter are looking at me, and the producer goes, does it matter? And the kid looks at me. He goes, you're just being a picky bitch. And I said, no.
Oh, wow.
I said, I'm an umpire. I've been an umpire a long time. And they are 2 different things. Foul ball, foul tip, dead ball, live ball. It matters. I got called into my boss the next morning and ordered to apologize to that kid because I hurt his feelings.
Even back then.
And I'm like, why did you hire me? And not one person in that room seemed to understand foul ball, foul tip. 2 different things.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff happened all the time. They acted like, how could I possibly know what was going on? I'm like, I do know what's going on. So, yeah. It was no bueno,
That's a bummer. Was there any people that were there that you enjoyed working with at that time?
Oh, yes.
Or athletes or anything like that?
At ESPN, there were some lovely people. Mike Tirico was my first partner, one of my partners there, and he and I worked for a long time together. He's a great guy. Dan Patrick is a lovely person. There were some lovely people there, but sadly, just like everywhere, it's the jerks that stand out.
Right.
I was working there. People don't believe me when I tell them this was before the internet, and so if you wanted a piece of information, you had to find it, right? And we had a guy named Howie. And I didn't know who Howie was. Nobody explained about Howie to me, but he would just float through the newsroom and people would talk to him. And I didn't know what he was doing. He wasn't a producer, director, he wasn't on air. And finally, I found out he was the sports stats guy. That meant you could call him over and ask him any question at all. Like, when was the last time the Packers won in the snow in December? By more than 3 points. And he'd go, that would have been it. He'll tell you. I mean, he was crazy that he could do any of that. So I never really talked to Howie, but one night I was in a crunch because I had to get on the set and I needed a piece of information. I don't remember what the information was. I said, Howie, because he happened to walk right by me. I said, I asked him the question. He gave me the answer. I put it in my script and went on and I did it. The next morning, my boss called me and he goes, why did you say that on the air? I said, well, what do you mean? He said, that's not true. That information isn't true. And I didn't want to throw Howie under the bus, but then I turned around and he's leaning in the doorway and he goes, I said, well, Howie gave me the information. He goes, I didn't tell her anything. So then I can't use the stats guy the whole time I'm there. So that kind of thing. It was.
That sucks.
Yeah. So.
And stats are kind of important pre-internet.
Yeah, well, it was. Today I could find the information myself, but especially when you're in time, you got to get on the set. The show's going to be there. It's like when I used to tell my students, they'd say, "I'm only 5 minutes late," and I go, "If I was 1 second late on the set and there's nobody in the seat when the red light goes on, I'm out of a job." Yeah. So you had to be there. You had to have the information, and I was in a situation where I couldn't get the information like everybody else. So it's those kinds of things. But again, there were some very nice people too, so I don't want to slam everybody.
Mm-hmm.
How does that lead into writing books?
Well, it's very funny because it turns out I'm dyslexic. Okay, when I was a kid, they just said I was stupid and lazy, and not that I had some kind of miswiring in my brain. And when I was, people don't understand, when you become a sportscaster, the most important thing you have to do is write. Even I taught in college briefly, and they didn't believe me. I said, writing is the most important thing. So I was forced into being able to write 24 stories a day when I was doing local news. I did 2 shows and 12 or 15, I would have 3.5, 4 minutes, and I'd have to fill that time and write stories and write report, packages where I went out and interviewed people. That's writing. And then when I got out of television, I became a print reporter, which meant I had more space, more column, more words that I could write. So the moving into novels seemed a normal thing. It just was a bigger form of storytelling. And I'm an Irish girl, so Irish people like to tell stories, apparently. And I just became a writer. But it's ironic that I hated to read as a kid because I didn't read well. And it wasn't until I'd been teaching a couple of years when my principal said, "I'm sorry, we can't fill your journalism classes, so you're going to have to teach reading." I said, "I can't teach reading." And they made me go back to college and take 15 more credit hours to become a reading specialist, where I discovered dyslexia. And I went, "Oh, that's me. I am those. I have." Yeah, it's funny. There's also a right and left issue with dyslexia, which I have badly. And I was routinely pointing the wrong way on first downs in football. My crewmates would laugh their butts off. They'd always go, that way, go that way. So yeah, it's very ironic that I happen to be an author. The other weird thing is I don't write about sports ever.
I was just going to ask that question because I've seen some of the titles of and none of them are sports related.
No,
that seems odd.
It is odd. And when I was ushered out of television, I was pushing 40, and I was no longer considered pretty enough to be in front of a camera. And that's what mattered. And it broke my heart, and I couldn't get a job. And I went back to Phoenix. I'd worked in Phoenix before I went to ESPN. A friend said, and I was in the middle of a divorce, and all the feeling sorry for me that I did. Oh, poor me. And a friend said, "Come live with me." I said, "I have 2 big dogs and 4 cats, and you live in a condo." She said, "Just come back here." And I went there, and I couldn't get a job doing anything. I even went in a moment of desperation into a brand new sports bar. And I went in and I said to the manager, he was looking for a bartender, I said, "I can entertain your clients, your patrons, whether they're sober or not. I can talk sports with them, and I make a great cocktail, so hire me." And he looked me up and down like I was a piece of meat. And I realized that he said, "I don't think so." And I realized he was looking for somebody in a push-up bra with a short skirt. And so do you know what I did? I went back to officiating. I went from ESPN to doing Pop Warner football and Little League and men's leagues and high school. That's what I did. No one would hire me. And so I felt real sorry for me. This is a roundabout way to get to your answer. But one day I went to do a baseball game, and I met another umpire who had a profound limp, and he was kind of wacky. And it turns out that he was a Vietnam veteran who had been severely wounded and had post-traumatic stress and Agent Orange poisoning and a wall full of medals. And he and I became best friends. And we became baseball umpire partners for 5 years. And I don't know if you've seen the umpires, we sit in parking lots outside of our trunks with our folding chairs, right? And Don and I would go do double headers and we'd chat. And here's a man whose life was just a mess from Vietnam. He would tell me horrendous stories about Vietnam, never angry. He never complained. And I bitched about my husband and my fault in life. No one would put me on TV, poor me. And after a while, I started to realize I was a jerk. I didn't have anything to worry about. I mean, Don died at 60 from Agent Orange poisoning. And he made me understand that what I thought was important in life was not important at all. And so I ended up going back to college. I became a teacher, and I became a teacher in a Title I high school, which meant my kids lived in abject poverty. 75% of them lived in poverty, and in a real bad part of Phoenix. And I saw kids every day who lived in horrendous situations. Kids, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, gangs, teen pregnancy, 400 kids in foster care. And I realized that I had been such a spoiled brat my whole life that I had to straighten up and change. And I'll never forget this one day, this kid was late every day. And I dragged him out. I said, "You can't do this. You can't be late every day." And I read him the riot act. "You will never be successful." And he looked at the ground and goes, "Miss Montgomery, I'm really sorry, but I slept at my uncle's last night on his couch. And I didn't know the bus system. And I'm sorry I'm late, and I'll try to do better. And I don't know where I'm going to sleep every night." And I went, "What?" And he was homeless. And I went, this light bulb went bing on my head. And I went, I'm a jerk. And I changed. I became nicer. And I started trying to appreciate what these kids were going through. And many of my subjects in my books are from the things I learned that my kids were going through. I have one about kids in cults, religious cults. I have one about a serial rapist. I can't tell you the number of little girls in my classes that were raped by their own family members, and nobody cared. I wrote about foster care. I am a foster mom. I ended up becoming a mom to 4 kids. They're in their 20s now. They still call me mom. And awesome. They were all my students. And so I changed a lot. I went from thinking it was important to have the camera on me all the time to realizing that wasn't important at all. So no, I don't write about sports. I write about societal issues, environmental issues, PTSD. My first book was dedicated to Don, my baseball partner. And many of the stories in A Light in the Desert are stories he told me about Vietnam. So I had to go through this kind of transition where I realized I was a jerk. And then I started writing books about things that were more important than the things I was doing before that.
How did it feel to actually publish a book and to have that out in the world to where somebody can pick that up and it can, drastically change their viewpoint on life?
It's hard. It is like having a baby, and here's, I shouldn't say that. I couldn't have any children of my own. So I'm guessing, but I have children, but they're not my biological children. And, you raise this thing up and then you send it out into the world and I hope you did well and everybody likes it. But publishing is extremely difficult today. Amazon tried to do a nice thing and make books available to everybody in the world, but it has destroyed any chance anybody has of making a living. I am so grateful I have Social Security and a great pension, because I would never live off my royalties at this point. And unless you get something, like the guy that wrote Dances with Wolves, he didn't sell any books till his buddy, Kevin Costner, made a movie about his book, and then he became a bestseller. So if something like that happens, you get lucky. At this point, I have 6 traditionally published books, which means they're not self-published. Other people paid to publish them. I have 3 different publishers at the moment. So they pay, not me, and there's a big difference there. That's one of the reasons many of us can't get our books recognized, because it used to be there were maybe 250,000 books published in the United States every year. Now there's 4 million, and only 2% of them are traditionally published, which means 98% are self-published. And I don't have anything against anybody that does that, but it certainly makes it a big pile of books to find anybody's book in. So I'm fortunate. I've had some success. I love to write. I do. I love to tell stories. I blog every week and tell stories. And so, again, I just had one come out in June, which is called Your Forgotten Sons, which is a great departure from what I've written in the past. Your Forgotten Sons is about a man who was in the Graves Registration Service in World War II. It's inspired by a true story, a real guy. Do you guys know what the Graves Registration Service was?
No.
Well, let's talk about Normandy. Okay, we hit the beaches at Normandy that first day. There are 10,000 dead, both Allies and Germans. 10,000 first day. Where'd all those bodies go? We sent 186,000 Allied soldiers through the beaches of Normandy to move into Germany over the next months. You had to get those bodies picked up for health reasons and for morale reasons. You can't have guys floating out in the water bumping up against the ships as those new kids are coming in. So the Graves Registration Service were the guys that located, identified, and buried the dead.
Oh, wow.
And guess what? Nobody talks about them. When you read a World War II novel or you see a movie, you see planes falling out of the sky, you see guys shooting each other, and then the page turns or it goes to a new scene in the movie. But nobody stays around to see what happens to the bodies or the parts of the bodies. Mm-hmm. So it was a very difficult book to write. And I'm glad I did it. It's getting very good reviews right now. It's called Your Forgotten Sons, because the last letter Bud Richardville wrote home, he signed Your Forgotten Son to his mother. So I wrote it from a packet of 75-year-old letters that were given to me by his niece. And she said, tell his story, tell Bud's story for me. So I did.
That's amazing. That's really awesome.
Wow. That's great. That's really cool.
Did you have any inspirations when it comes to your writing? Like anybody that, you might be a fan of their work, or, somebody that was just very inspirational in your own life?
Not authors maybe, but for example, the first book I had published, it was Don, my baseball partner, who inspired me. Yeah. His life inspired me. And it's not it's not biographical really about him, but his experiences are in there. And the suffering that he went through with the post-traumatic stress was horrible. And at that point, I'd never heard of post-traumatic stress. It was before people understood what it was. Mm-hmm. So he inspired me. I miss him every day. He was my buddy. And yeah, he changed me. He did. And the other ones were, I get inspired by stories. I still read the old-fashioned newspaper. I still read a paper newspaper. And wow. I read, I'm a news junkie. I spent, I don't know how many years in newsrooms. And so you become addicted to the news. And sometimes I wish I wasn't, but I am. And so I would find interesting stories in the news, and they would inspire me, and they'd roll around in my head for a while. Like I have a book called The Scent of Rain, and it's about a religious cult, the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mormons, but the polygamous Mormons that live in Arizona. And their prophet had 80 wives, and some of them were 12 and 13 years old. And this was happening in Arizona when I lived there. And I'm like, I'm from the East Coast. I'm like, this can't be real, but it was. And I drove up there and I pretended I didn't know who they were. And the women wore high-necked prairie dresses and excuse me, big hair, and they were told they didn't have radios, TVs, newspapers, no outside world. And they used to stand with rifles at the road that led into there, but the federal government said you can't do that. Our taxpayer money pays for the road. So I drove in and drove around. It was terrifying. I was going to take pictures, but I didn't. And it was a horrifying experience, and it was horrifying to see little tiny girls dressed in these prairie dresses. They looked at me like I was the devil. I mean, they were they were told that because I wasn't like them, that I was terrible and evil, and it was really messed up. They finally arrested the prophet. He's now in prison forever, but they're still up there, and there are 10,000 of these people that live like it's the 1880s, and the women have no rights. And yeah, it's gotten better though, but it's a mess. It's called Colorado City, Arizona. Look it up. Terrifying. So I wrote a book about a 16-year-old girl in that world and a young man who escapes from foster care in Phoenix. So, I somehow weave things I know about into the stories.
That's really cool. That's awesome. Now, does writing these books and getting them out there, does it ever replace that feeling you had of being in front of the camera that you love so much with sportscasting, or has it in a way kind of eclipsed it at this point?
Now I get that thrill from reviews.
Okay.
Like I got a 5-star review from the book and I put that out. I get that. It's not quite the same as being on camera or being out covering a ball game or something, but I get that same kind of charge. I mean, because it's one thing when friends say they love your book, but they love your book because they love you, right? But when a complete stranger says this is a spectacular book, I give it 5 stars, which happened to me recently. I'm like, oh, it's like being on TV again. But it's a grind because my book came out. This last one came out in June. I have to spend the next year promoting it. Mm-hmm. So it was launched on the 80th anniversary of D-Day, June 6th, and so I have some trips coming up. The gentleman that the story is about, we're having a ceremony for him in Vincennes, Indiana, where he was born and grew up.
That's awesome.
And he was yeah. I don't want to say what happened to him, but it's kind of would be a spoiler. But anyway, we're going there in a couple of weeks. We're going to have a memorial service for him, an honor guard that I don't think he ever got when he was buried. And I've got some more back in Columbus, Georgia. Oh my God, I'm going back there to do some Veterans Day events. So, now it's just promoting it. And I don't have an idea now. If you guys have an idea for me, I need a new book to write.
We'll give you the story of Michael's life.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, like, I don't know, like, do you wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh my gosh, I got an idea for a book, and you go ahead and just start writing stuff down? Like, you have a notebook next to you?
It has to kind of coagulate in your brain. For example, in Arizona, where I lived for 30 years, we have a wild horse problem. And what that means is we have wild horses that are right on the outskirts of Phoenix, because Phoenix has grown so massively. It's like LA now when you fly into it. So these wild horses that have been out there for a long time, they're getting in the way. They're getting hit by cars. And the cattle ranchers hate them because the cattle ranchers lease the land from the Bureau of Land Management, and the horses are eating the fodder, and the cows aren't getting enough of it, so they hate them. And then you've got the Audubon Society. Bird people hate them because the horses are eating all the little trees along the Salt River, and the birds have nowhere to nest, so the Audubon Society people hate them. And then you have the people who love them too much because they feed them. And we have terrible droughts, and there isn't enough, and we've got skinny horses that make people sad. But you're not supposed to feed a wild animal. That's against the law. However, there are people that say the wild horses are not wild animals at all, that they're domestic animals that were released and reproduced, and that means we should shoot them all. And I mean, because let's be honest, 10,000 years ago, all the horses in America disappeared. They were killed off by humans and the Ice Age and everything. And we didn't have horses back in this country until 1493, when Christopher Columbus landed on the island where I am right now. I live in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands sometimes. And he landed right here on St. Croix and it's my understanding, that's when he brought the horses back. That's the first time horses had been here. And so horses have only been in the Americas for 500 years because they were brought from Europe. That makes them technically an invasive species. So what do we do with the horses? We have too many, and many in Nevada. There are a lot of states in the West that have a wild horse problem. So the federal government rounds up thousands of them and sticks them in corrals. That's no life for a horse. So they can't get people to adopt them because they're wild horses and because they cost a lot of money. So I wrote a book about the wild horse problem, but I also tied it into a woman escaping domestic violence. So I get a bunch of stories in my head and then merge them together.
That's awesome.
St. Croix, home of the mongoose, the radio station.
Oh, the mongoose. That's our favorite invasive species here. Do you know why we have mongoose here?
Because the king cobra stinks.
No.
I thought it was because of the king cobra
stinks. No, it's because Columbus and his buddies brought over rats. And they brought all of a sudden there were rats everywhere. And this island is full of sugarcane. It's old plantations. They made rum here. Wonderful rum, I might add, which I will have later when I'm off the show. So what happened is they brought all the rats off the ships, and some brilliant person said, oh, mongooses like to eat rats. Let's bring the mongooses over. The problem is the mongooses are out in the daytime, and the rats only come out at night. So we have now an infestation of mongooses that killed all the beautiful tropical birds we had here. We used to have all macaws and beautiful parrots. We don't have them anymore because the mongooses ate their eggs. We have a problem with invasive species. So I write about that stuff too.
That's really cool.
So I helped build the Home Depot that's on St. Croix.
Did you really? Oh my God, I live there.
Yeah, I did.
Because we bought our condo here 3 years ago, and so we've been redoing it, ripping things out. So I know very well that one. So you know my little island.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't spend a lot of time there. I was there a little bit, but yeah, I helped build that Home Depot.
Well, thank you for doing that. Without it, we would not function. There aren't many big box stores here.
No, there are not.
It's little, but I'm a scuba diver, and as a scuba diver, the fact that I can look out my back door and I'm looking at the Caribbean, and I can half an hour from getting in the water, not putting my gear on and getting in the water. I'm delighted to be here, and it's hot here, but it's not Phoenix, Arizona hot.
Mm-hmm.
I get to look at the ocean, so I choose here.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's going to be incredible. How long have you lived there for?
I'm sorry?
How long have you lived there for?
We've been coming here for 7 years, but we didn't own here till 3 years ago.
Okay.
So my hope now is to be here most of the time. We have our kids are like, you have to come home for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, we'll come home for Thanksgiving. We'll do that. And I'm also a rock collector, and that you can't collect rocks.
Nice.
Here. There's no rocks, but Arizona is like a rock collector's heaven. And my youngest son, who's 26, is also a rock collector. So I'll go home and go rock collecting for a couple months with him, but then we'll come back here because I prefer it here. It's peaceful. It's quiet. Phoenix, I live in an old section of Phoenix, but it's in the middle of the city, and it's just too big and too noisy, and I don't want to be there. I want to be here in the quiet.
Everything's on island time.
That's right. And for me, that's hard because I'm like, that guy was supposed to be here at 8 o'clock. And no one's here at 8 o'clock. You're like,
yeah.
So I'm learning patience, which I've never had. And yeah, you just have to go with it and not be in a hurry. It's a whole different lifestyle, and I'm doing my best to adjust.
Yeah.
Does that make it easier to write, being able to get in a more peaceful environment and kind of get away from things?
I was lucky. I retired from teaching in 2020. And so I didn't have to go to work every day. Normally, when I wrote most of my books, I was still teaching. And so I would only write in the summer. I'd plan things out. I'd do interviews. Like when I did the book about the wild horses on the Salt, on the Salt River. It's called Wild Horses on the Salt. And I needed, for example, a cattle rancher to see his point of view. So I called one up and said, can I come out and interview? And he said, sure. It's amazing how people will invite you into your home and you say, I'd like to interview you. And so I would do all the interviews and get all my research done during the school year, on the weekends and stuff. And then I would write the books in the summer. So over 10 weeks, I'd write the book. And that's what I did for the most part. Wild Horses on the Your Forgotten Sons, it was the pandemic. I wasn't going anywhere. So yeah, mostly that's how I wrote my books. Now I can write whenever I feel like it now. And I write an article a week. I mean, I do that every week. But writing a book is the joyful part. It's the fun part. It's where you meet all your characters. And I think most authors will probably admit that we're a little bit off because we talk to our characters. They hang out with us. Our family members worry about us sometimes. Who are you talking to? Don't worry, it's okay. So, I enjoy that part. The hard part is when a publisher buys it or takes it, and then you have to edit, and then you have to do the PR, marketing, all that kind of thing. It's not a lot of fun generally. In my case, it's okay because like podcasts, I know a lot of authors don't like to do podcasts, but I never met a microphone I didn't like. I'm perfectly happy to talk to people. But a lot of authors aren't like that. A lot of authors just want their writing to talk for them. I'm like, no, you got to get out there and talk about your books.
Yeah, 100%. So I have a couple questions for you. Typically towards the end of our podcasts, we have a couple segments. The first one's called No Dumb Questions.
Okay.
The question is that we get from somebody in our audience that submits upon when we release who's coming on social media. The question this week was, do you feel it's possible for anybody to be a sportscaster, or is there some things that you feel would hold people back from being able to accomplish that?
I don't think so. I don't think there are. I did a podcast with a gentleman who was a broadcaster, who did color for baseball, and he was blind from birth. Never saw a baseball game in his life. Fabulous. Okay. I don't think there's really anything that would hold you back. I do think you have to have some skills. A speaking voice is certainly necessary. One that you can work on for the most part. And you have to be able to tell a story, however you can do that. But I think they're broadening their horizons on who can be on TV now. It's not, all the women don't look the same anymore. I really don't think there's anything that would hold you back as long as you can tell a story in some fashion or another.
And just from, I guess, to piggyback off of their question with one of my own, is it possible to become a sportscaster or a broadcast journalist without actually having the degree in journalism?
You do not need a degree in journalism. No, you do not. Now, I encourage, as a teacher, former teacher, I encourage everyone to go to college. And when I say college, if you want to be a broadcaster, when I say college, I also mean people that want to be an electrician or a carpenter, or I don't mean a university. But if you want to be a broadcaster, you need to learn how to tell a story. You need to learn how to write a story, because the people on TV are not ad-libbing, okay? Unless they're interviewing someone, maybe. Those things are all written out. So you can't, because the director has to know what you're going to do. They have to know when to bring up video. They have to know when to bring up a package. They have to know when to do things. So everything has to be written. You have to know how to write a story. And that's the thing that's hard for people, because when I taught at ASU briefly, and the kids were like, well, why do we have to write? Because you have to know how to write a story. So however you can manage to do that, that's really important. And now I forgot your question. What was the question?
It was basically just, do you need to have the journalism degree?
No, you do not. No, you do. You can, but I would encourage you to go to college just to broaden your horizons. You go to college, you don't need a journalism degree. Hell, get one in anything, political science or history, or it doesn't matter, or sports. It doesn't matter what it's in. But I encourage young people, especially, to go away to school if you can. Leave home, learn how to do your own laundry, learn how to deal with your own timetable without having mommy and daddy telling you what to do. Please go to college if you can. But you do not need a communications degree or a journalism degree, but I would recommend you take some kind of, I took TV writing and radio writing. I never took the kind of writing for books ever. But yet I write books. So no, you don't need a journalism degree, but I encourage you to go to college.
Great. And then my final question for you, it's a segment that's called We Have to Ask, but You Do Not Have to Answer. Sometimes they're inappropriate, sometimes they're not. The question I have for you today is, what's like the biggest blooper that's ever happened either on the field for you or in the middle of a broadcast?
Does it have to be live?
No, I guess not.
Okay, because when I was first in Columbus, Georgia, my news director said, go down to the Coliseum, the wrestlers are here. And I went, oh, the Olympic wrestlers are here? It's like, no, not the Olympic wrestlers, the wrestlers. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, the WWF, the World Wrestling Federation. I'm like, that's not a sport. He said, yes, it is. And the guy who I worked with, he said, yes, we have to go down. He grabbed a camera. I'm like, this is theater. This is not a sport. So I'm in this hallway of this Veterans Coliseum in Columbus, and I'm waiting there, and here comes this gargantuan man with stringy wet hair and sweats on, and he's coming towards me. It looks like he's got a closed eye, and I honestly didn't know what to ask. I could have picked a sport. I could ask you something, and so I just decided to be honest. And I put my microphone in that. He was about 6'6". And I said, I have to be honest. I said, I don't know what to ask you because this isn't real. And there was silence. And he stared down at me and he ripped his shirt and he showed me all these stitches, scars on his arm. He goes, "Does that look real to you, honey? Does that look real?" And I went, "Huh?" And then he pulls up his pant leg and he's got his knee has been sliced with surgical cuts. And he goes, "Does that look real?" And he's screaming and spit's coming out of his mouth. I'm going to die before I ever get out of Columbus, Georgia. And my partner's just back there shooting the camera. And that made me rethink how I do things. And the funny thing is, years later, I became friends with, do you know who Big John Studd was?
I do. Yeah,
we do.
His real name was John Minton III. Sadly, he died at like 47. Wonderful man, history buff, great guy. And I'd go see him at where he was when I worked in Rochester, and he'd go, "Annie, how are you? Give me a big hug, nice guy." He goes, "Hold on, I'll be back." He'd go, "Ah!" And he'd go running out to entertain people. But he's the one that explained to me later about wrestlers. Of course, they're athletes. I should never have told that guy it wasn't real. Yeah. But it's choreographed. They know who's going to win. And so I'm looking back on it thinking that man was juiced out of his mind, probably at the time. And I said all the wrong things. And I'm lucky I'm alive today.
Yeah.
So, Anne, can I share a little secret with you?
I'm sorry?
Can I share a little secret with you?
Sure.
That guy, a former professional wrestler.
Were you really?
Not on the WWF level, but I wrestled with the NWA for several years.
Wow.
Actually, I'll give you
oh, my God. That's great. Do you forgive me? Do you forgive me for my ignorance?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But first, let me show you a whole bunch of scars and scream at you.
Yeah. Oh, my God. I will not. When I saw that guy's shoulder, and I've since had 2 rotator cuff surgeries, so I understand his pain. But he was just out of his mind. And I'm like, I think I said nothing. I was completely speechless the whole time and like ran away. But I was never so dumbfounded in my life because I didn't grow up with that. I grew up in New Jersey. Yeah. I mean, I just knew it was, entertainment.
Yeah, no, that's really it's a really funny story. It's just especially back then. I would imagine this was like a while ago.
83.
Back in like the 70s, 80s, they had this thing called kayfabe where wrestlers would like do everything to prove that everything was 100% legit. It wasn't like predetermined. It was like right around like the late 90s, early 2000s. Like it really started to come out a lot more that things are scripted and that it's entertainment. So,
but I wasn't trying to be rude. I just didn't know what to ask.
It's totally understandable.
I learned, and and John Minton was a wonderful man. I really liked him. He was. Did you ever meet him?
No, I wish I would have. But I got to watch a lot of his matches growing up.
And he was very, very smart. I mean, he was you could talk history with him forever. And he believed that he was with Hannibal when he crossed the Alps. That he had lived a life, and he could talk about it. Yeah, I really liked him. And his wife was a swimmer, and he had 2, and he wouldn't let his kids watch him wrestle. He said they were too little, and I was sad when he died so young, but I think that was steroids, a lot of steroids. He admitted it. He said he was in pain all the time, that's why he took them.
So Anne, let me ask this before we let you go. I know that you have a website. I'm going to make sure I link that down below. But where can people find your books? Where can people follow you? Are there any social media accounts you'd like to plug?
Sure. If they go to my website, which is AnneMontgomeryWriter.com, that's Anne with an E, AnneMontgomeryWriter.com. All of my links are there. You can buy my books anywhere. They're on all the, sites, Amazon, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, wherever you buy books. And on my pages, there's links to all of them. So it's you can just put Anne Montgomery author online and it'll all come up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the time you've given us today. And Michael, before we let Anne go, are there any last questions you have for her?
No, it's great to go ahead and, just hear about your journey and the fact that every time someone told you no, you kind of gave them the old, yeah, I'll show you. And it's a great story. It's great talking to you and understanding what the things where you had to go through to get where you are. So, I mean, it was great. Thank you very much for coming on with us.
You're welcome. And let me say that as a teacher, I always told my students, I said, no is a gift. When people tell you no, it's a gift. Use it. Now, does that mean you get everything you want? No. I wanted to be the first woman official in the NFL, and I was pushing 55 then. They weren't going to take me, and I'm a terrible runner, so I was never going to go. But you're not going to get everything you want, but it should spur you into the "I will prove you wrong" moment. And I learned that when I was going off to college, and my brother, who was 2 years older than me, stood there, and I was packing to go to college, and he goes, "You won't survive college. You'll flunk out before the first semester." He said, "You're too stupid to be in college. I bet you $20 you flunk out." You know what? I would rather have been hit by a truck and killed than flunk out of college. So I figured out a way to get over the dyslexia and figure out how I could survive in college. And I think when people tell you that you're not good enough or you're never going to make it, you may not get what you wanted in the first place, but that should spur you to do the best you can to get to move forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's super encouraging, especially for people that are listening to this that have been told no, or, have been told, hey, you're a woman, you'll never be able to do X, Y, and Z because of X, Y, and Z, to see that you've done basically everything on your list of things you wanted to do. You were a sportscaster, you were an official, you were a teacher, you are an author.
I'm a mom.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Who knew that was going to happen?
Yeah.
Every time one of the kids calls, I'm going, how did I become a mom again? Life is so strange. Yeah, if they had kept me in TV, I wouldn't have been a teacher, and I wouldn't have been a mom. And now I'm a grandma. I have a six-year-old grandson.
Nice.
So life is bizarrely wonderful. The thing is, those right and left turns in the road, take them. Don't be upset. It's never going to be the way you planned it, but maybe it'll be better. So yeah. And please don't be afraid of criticism is the other thing. People say, I'm afraid to send my book out. What if people don't like it? Then write another book. Yeah. I think probably being in television where people would write me up in the paper and say that stupid girl doesn't know what she's talking about, or being an official where people criticize me all the time, that prepared me for being an author, where people say they don't like my book for XYZ. So I think people should get used to criticism and be grateful that people offered it, because you learn from it. You don't learn from success at all. You learn from failure. So we should stop making people feel they should not fail. We should fail.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's very great advice. Michael, anything special coming up on your channel this upcoming week?
Not a lot of stuff. Just a lot of the same. We have the podcast tomorrow night, and then working on a gentleman who is a PSA authenticator to come on the show.
Huh.
That'll be really cool.
Yeah.
So make sure you guys follow Huddle Card Collection so that you can be a part of that. Every Wednesday night, he does a podcast called Collecting Profit, which is really awesome. Highly encourage you guys to check that out as well. If you'd like to see the video format of this show, it will be released on Picksburgh on YouTube. So make sure you come over and follow me for any of my wild shenanigans along with this podcast. This will also be released on Spotify and other streaming outlets. So if you have a special or a favorite streaming service, go ahead and look up Achieve More Podcast. You should be able to find us there. Till the next episode, guys, we appreciate you listening, and God bless you.
Thanks, everybody.